Start it. And of course, we will get a little grounding really quick, a little energy, and get centered. So here we go. All right, so we'll just take a few moments to get kind of centered and grounded. And I really want to spiritualize the atmosphere with one of my morning affirmations, which to me is very powerful. There is nothing to hate. I forgive everyone and everything. I am friends with everyone and everything. And I love everyone and everything. It's a beautiful place to be when we can speak those words and feel that, not just with our mind, our intellect, but with our heart. That we can send that out and also receive it, because it's not only for out there, but mostly for within us. And so, I know I've had a hustle and bustle of a day today, and I'm sure many of you have as well. So, getting into the spirit of relaxing and opening up our receptivity. So today, a word I want to share is being receptive, being open, being willing to receive the wisdom, the inspiration, and the knowledge. And as today is lesson 5, which is knowledge and good judgment. And I want to welcome everyone for coming today, new faces and my brothers and sisters, and those also who clearly have been watching online and joining in with us. So I want to say hi to you, because some of you have been saying hello, hi, and I don't have I probably do have the power, but I'm not exercising the power to respond to you mentally. So I want to say hi to you out there in the universe. Like always, I would like to cover the previous lessons, just so that we touch upon them. So whether this is your first time here, or you've come for every lesson. And lesson 1 being the first principle, really our grounding foundational principle, that God is good and God is omnipresent. God is all in all. There is only God. Now, the word God for some may not resonate, so let us today use some other words in that replacement. Let's say divine consciousness. Let us say spirit, source. These are some of the other labels that we have used to try to describe that which is undescribable or beyond words, to get to the very essence of what we're trying to say. But let it be known that we understand that which we speak of is much deeper and greater than our words may be able to unfold here for us. But we try with symbols and labels to share the divine inspiration. So God is good and God is omnipresent. So God is the only self in us and in our neighbor. And God is now working with us and through us to accomplish all the things that we are to accomplish today. Lesson 2, which is the real and unreal as a heading. The second lesson is God is the one substance, creative life, intelligence, power, consciousness, reality. Once again, all is God. There is only God. And really, lesson number 2 is there is no evil force that is standing against that which we call God, the one power. That there is no other power opposite of God, of spirit. And so there is nothing to fear in omnipresent God, and that God is the only power. So lesson 2, there is no evil, there is nothing to fear, and I like to say that I am fearless, but not foolish. Lesson 3, words, their use and power. So God is supreme intelligence, wisdom, understanding, reason, all of which can be comprehended in one word, mind, or as we say, divine mind or consciousness. And so God is mind, and since God is the great first cause, therefore mind is the great first cause. Divine mind is the one creative power and source of all true manifestations. So we recognize, hello, brother. There's a wonderful handout and some water. So happy that you actually could make it. So we recognize that God is not a person, a man or a woman up in the sky sitting in a chair, ruling as we have in some of our teachings been taught, that God is this form. In fact, we recognize that God is the formless, the invisible, that all forms spring out from. And so we understand that divine mind is a great, again, still could be considered a label or a description, but what a great one when we do have the understanding that within my mind or consciousness, I have an entire world or worlds, and dreaming in our dream state, this is a wonderful place to capture the essence of that description of divine mind. Because within our dreams, within our dreams, we have those glimpses and moments where we have entire worlds, people and places and interactions. And so there is that symbol that we get and how we can understand that we right now are within the great divine mind of God, consciousness. And that divine mind is the only creative power. And then lesson 4, which is faith. And faith, is definitely a powerful subject and can also be a subject that's difficult for some people. But lesson 4 is faith. And let me read this and then we'll discuss a little. So God is faith. True faith is a firm, persistent, determined belief in almighty good, changeless, deathless, substantial spirit. As the all in all, faith is the substance of everything that you desire. Faith is confidence, the firm standing in the unity and allness of omnipresent deity. And deity being another word, once again, for divine consciousness, God. Now faith, blind faith, we're going to discuss this today as we get into lesson 5, because there is a difference in these teachings of the sages of the ages from blind faith and faith with wisdom, faith with knowledge, faith with discernment, and these two together, working together. And that's what lesson 5 is, knowledge and good judgment. And God is omnipotent, all-knowing, all-intelligence, all wisdom. Good judgment is the inspiration and understanding and wisdom and the ideas that are flowing from divine consciousness unto God's children, which is us. And so our divine nature, let's call it, that is our soul, that originates from divine consciousness, is divine nature that is here and now, that is unfolding this divine character. That us as coming into the presence and the desire to have a relationship with Spirit. Because see, Spirit is here, God is here, and gives us all that we could ever desire. But we have this seeming free will that we can live this life without the thought of God. We don't have to have even the thoughts of God in this waking, walking state. And we're free to do that, to walk this realm called planet Earth and do whatever we really want, right? We really have that freedom. But obviously this divine nature within us is calling. A lot of us have these urges for things, desires. We'll call them material things and objects and obtaining and getting. And it's in all different areas. But these, what we'll call desires within us for things, are really a desire for our attaining a relationship with God. It really is. It's that inner call for that something you know is out there for your satisfaction. And it's there, and it is God, and God is with us and within us. So I like to remind us that the kingdom of God is within us. So it's not outside of us. It is within us. And so today we will talk about the wisdom that is within us, speaking to us silently, calling us constantly, giving to us, breathing inspiration and life in and through us. And sometimes we hear it, we catch glimpses, and other times we aren't receptive. And again, receptivity is important. So I wanted to, does anyone have any comments, questions about what we've said? This is interactive, by the way. So if anything rises within your consciousness, I like to say this, that I am not teaching you anything. I am reminding you only, if that, and just helping to activate within you already that which you know, which is the all knowledge, which is God dwelling in us. So does anyone have any comments or questions of what's been said? And you don't have to. So I'd like to read this from Annie. Faith and understanding go hand in hand when the works of the Christ are made manifest. Whenever either appears alone, there comes a limitation in healing, for each is essential to the full manifestation of the other. The belief in faith alone, commonly called blind faith, in which the disciple does not seek knowledge, degenerates into superstition and even becomes barren. Increase of faith comes through increase of knowledge. I know whom I have believed, as 2 Timothy 1:12 says. And the student, which is all of us, who seeks to add to his consciousness of healing power, must apply himself diligently and systematically to the study of divine mind and its idea, which we are the idea, the image of God. So misunderstanding of the character and office of God and his child, man, is the cause of the impotency in accomplishing divine works. Many a faith healer has lost a case because of his lack of knowledge of God's wish concerning the one in whom he's praying. Perhaps he has prayed earnestly and is near the state of consciousness whereby the false claim of disease can be met and vanquished when a tempting doubt begins to insinuate itself into one's mind. Perhaps, and this is the doubt that pops in, right? Well, perhaps it's meant for this person to pass, to transition, to go on. Maybe, this that has befallen them is God's will, is what some will say. It's God's will. And like it says here, perhaps it is not the will of God that this one shall be healed. Perhaps his time has come to die. Then the ardor of the petitioner begins to cool. So basically they start losing faith, having doubt, and they become shaken. And he fears to proceed lest he be doing that which is contrary to divine will. He weakens, he ceases to pray, and the patient goes the way of all flesh. So the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him. But the faith that always succeeds must be founded upon knowledge that it is not the will of God that any man shall die. The world has hypnotized itself too long upon this subject, and must now be awakened to the truth that God does not send death any more than he sends sin. The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. I have no pleasure in the death of him that dieth, saith the Lord. Wherefore turn yourselves and live ye. So God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. God is not the author of discord, such as disease and death. Ignorance is the cause of all evil manifestations, and the grossest ignorance of all is to ascribe their origin to God. Let us be healed of this ignorance. And Solomon said that wisdom was the principal thing. By all, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, understanding. This is life eternal, that they may know the only true God and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. And so this knowledge, and I also want to be clear really quick and touch on Christ, because those who are watching, I'm going to imagine there's lots of folks who love Jesus Christ and hear the name and they're cool. And there's some others, because of churches they may have gone to and teachings that they may have been given about who Jesus the Christ was. And in our understanding, and I'll say within New Thought and even within, a lot of my Hindu friends, right? Matter of fact, they call Jesus H. Christ, Jesus Hindu Christ, because they recognize him, as a yogi master, a divine being, right up there with Shiva and Krishna. So I just want to make this clear that we speak of, and it's also in the Bible. So when those get past literal or get to the true spiritual understanding, Paul said, have the mind of Christ. And so we take on the mind. Even John the Baptist, as we have said, you heard him in the wilderness saying, repent ye, repent ye. Well, what that translation, that's a mistranslation. It is change your mind. Change your mind. And so this is super important for us to understand that it is a changing our perception and awareness that there is knowledge along with faith that works. And these two powers, we'll call them, work together to activate that creative force in our lives. So does that touch anyone or resonate or not resonate? Is there does that bring into your awareness something you haven't thought about within hearing some of these things? Is there anything that calls to you or speaks to you? Is there something inside of you that doesn't like what you just heard? And I'm curious about that too. Does anyone? Not that we need to answer those now. By the way, if you pose your questions online, I will definitely go afterwards and respond to you in the videos, because I know some of that happened last time. So we understand that we're not asking people to have blind faith, right? We're not just saying, have faith, just believe. There is that seeking of knowledge, and there's that getting and attaining it. And, at first for us, truly in our walk and our unfoldment of spiritual realization and our path to this Christ consciousness, this divine consciousness, this cosmic consciousness, at first it is intellectual. And so we should all understand these steps in our spiritual unfoldment, that at first there is hearing these words, hearing this wisdom, hearing this truth, and understanding it intellectually. I got it. Okay, I can read this. I'll study a little bit. I'll get to definitions, because that's another thing. There may be some words in these teachings and the teachings of all the sages of the ages that you may need to get a dictionary. You may need to do a little research and learn the definitions of some of these words. And that's all with your intellect. And the intellect is a good thing. It's our tool though. And as we know from previous lessons that we discussed, and it's important to remind ourselves that I am not my mind. I am not my intellect. I am not this body. The true me, the true you, transcends all of these objects, because all of the things that we can see and observe are objects to our subjective selves. Meaning, everything that I see, anything that I can observe, feeling, thought, these are all objects to my consciousness. And they are not me. We distinctively push them out in layers so that we see them as these objects of them. It's not the true me. It's not the consciousness. It's not the awareness. In fact, the experiencer is the one experiencing the objects. I hope this is making sense of what I'm saying. And the reason I'm saying it is because it's important to know, because we've been taught from the world, and at least from my perspective, get your intelligence. But there's a difference between wisdom and intelligence. And so that's where I'm trying to make the distinction, and also making the distinction that none of it is us. None of those things and objects are us, yet they're in our experience. They're in our awareness. And a part of this practice in learning this stuff is that even with the intellect, that's the first phase of capturing this intellectually. And then as it drops down, as these teachings drop down into our subconscious, they start eliminating the bad thoughts and ideas that were planted in us from childhood, possibly, from adulthood. And so these truths start to work on removing the weeds within the garden of our mind. And I very much like, to say that this mind, which is not us, and the reason why a garden for me works really well is because the mind being a garden where ideas and seeds are dropped into the subconscious and raised, but there is the gardener who is separate from the garden, who is there experiencing, but the one who observes and removes the weeds and plants the good seeds. And so once again, this is another analogy for us to capture the picture that the sages of the ages have painted for us. And all of this helps for our unfoldment, because it creates separation, distinction, separation of these things, so that we can free ourselves from all of the emotions that have before controlled us and pushed us and motivated us to respond in certain ways, actions and reactions. You make me mad, you make me happy. These are all objects. And once we have the distinction of separation from these things, then we see that as they arise into my awareness, I can start gardening and molding and pushing and shaping or removing or harnessing too these energies for the benefit of me and those around me. Is this making sense? Is it resonating? Are we capturing? Does anyone? And I keep asking, so don't get bored of me asking you if there. Yes.
Last week when you talked about faith, I think you were saying that you don't have faith, you are faith. That that faith that you were talking about today as blind faith is sort of your conscious mind that you call yourself, that we're talking about weeding right now, saying, well, it doesn't look like there's anything here to have faith in, but I'll just do it anyway because that's the right thing to do and God said to do it. But when you talked about last week how the faith was you, it made me think during the week here that, you know, I can't understand that with my conscious mind. I don't have the wisdom for that, but it rings true or resonates with me that that's another way of seeing my true self, that I'm not trying to have faith like a object like of my mind, but knowing that I am faith, like in a bigger context. Is that kind of what you were saying, or am I way off the base?
No, yes, because we think in the intellect, exactly as you put it, we think that we have to work towards this or just have this blind faith. I just need to accept. But this true faith that we truly are already. We come from divine consciousness. This is our true native self. This is our confident, blissful, knowing self that is faith, that is the faith of God. God is faith. I am faith. I am the faith of God. God is faith. And we can just say all these things, and it is so true. It is yes. So we say yes, that is beyond the intellect. See, and the intellect, you know, that we'll also, because we're going to get into this, is what we call mortal mind, right? Which is that personal, selfish, mortal, focused on me and what's good just for me. This is that intellect and selfish ego that tries to say, you know, that even wants to reject that faith, that true faith, right? Because it could be said that there's a warring between those. It's not really a warring. It's a balancing within oneself until we get into that realization. It is, and so it's a part of the unfolding. Absolutely. So you are correct, and you say things to me so beautifully. I understand you, and hopefully everyone else does too. That yes, that we feel exactly as you put it, Rock, that we have to do this or try to get there, but no, it's more of a letting go and really allowing divine consciousness and listening to the Spirit speak to us and giving us all that inspiration. Because the more that even the intellect dwells on this stuff, once again, it's like cracking at the shell and layers that we've built upon ourselves in our walking, waking state. And the light starts shining through, right? The wisdom, the true nature and communication starts shining through us, breaking away at that selfish persona, revealing the wisdom and intuition, and we really walk in that, and we are that. And so yes.
Well, you also used the example of Christ's parable, I guess. If you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could say, mountain, move, and the mountain would move. And, you know, that seems to my intellect like something I could never see happen. You know, it would never happen. I don't have even the faith of a mustard seed. But I think that example is, you know, what we're talking about, being faith instead of trying to intellectually have faith. Because, you know, obviously in this world, no one has the faith of a mustard seed. And, you know, that seems sad that they, you know, surely somebody must have it. but what we're looking at here is that, you know, you already are that. You just have to let go of that intellect that can't even see that.
Right.
It doesn't even have the faith of a mustard seed. It can no way ever see a mountain moving, a miracle of really any kind, much less no death. A lot of the things that we're talking about here could never could never go in our conscious mind as we understand ourselves, looking at the world. So the new way of looking through these lessons, perhaps, is ourselves reimagined. Not ourselves in any way that we've had through experience. It's I've heard it say a vision of ourselves, a vision through a sage's vision shared in the mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's what this is all about. In fact, it walks the intellect through all of these steps or these phases or these lessons. It walks us through those, and it's once again starts to then it transcends. Then we cross this river, that seems uncrossable. Doubt starts to leave. And so it's staying firm and confident in our walk through these steps and speaking it. And again, there'll be a time when we come into this realization, next phases of this spiritual unfoldment. But know, and I say this to you, those watching and those here, that there seems to be this work of walking through and speaking these things, but it is as simple as speaking these truths about you, whether your intellect agrees or not, that it is a truth that sets free, and wisdom starts to shine and break through, and the intellect becomes your tool. See, you don't lose that intellect. It's just no longer the imaginary boss. And so reimagining yourself is beautiful as well, because it is the truth. It's what we're asking you to do. Get past, as a child, be more like a child, where anything was possible for most of us until our parents told us, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't be that. You can't, and they told us we couldn't do it, but we had full inspiration. In fact, as children, if we were really to get as far back as one can, and everyone's at different stages of this power within us to get back to that child state or remembering your youth, you were absolutely more closer to your native awareness and divine self than we are today, with the clouds and layers of false teachings and hypnotism that's been going on. And so we have that imaginating power to see ourselves. There are many teachings that all of these sages, whether I talk about from Buddhism and the rainbow light body, to Christ and the transfiguration, to many different things, is one of the teachings is seeing yourself. So I share this with you. In your alone time, while you do all the other practices you may be working on, actually, imagine yourself and start wherever you want, whether it be your feet, your hands, your whatever it is, and imagine from your center a light, a glowing light, and that it's expanding and growing and illuminating to where that sphere of light is you. And because that is closer to our true form in the invisible than the form that we have created and wrapped around ourselves that we call our body. And so this is a practice, and this light that we project and imagine also helps to bring illumination and helps to shine through our intellect. But again, the intellect is a good tool. And so in no way do we say that your intellect will go away, or that even the one hearing me right now and seeing me right now goes away. We have, even in these teachings, we're told that we lose ourselves, to deny yourself, to sacrifice yourself, to kill the ego. Some people will tell you that. And in fact, the truth is, and we will get there, and we'll even say it tonight, that even with all the distinction and separation of the objects that we lay out before you, that we've spoken about, all collapses back in actually as the all that is. And we are still this entity, individualized, expression of divine consciousness. It's just that we're not latched on to I'm Dan, the guy that liked this or didn't like that, and all those labels and attributes that we've associated with the who we say we are. But that divineness of you, it's the power, it's the awareness and consciousness is the one that's hearing. It's not the ears. Consciousness is seeing, not the eyes. And so more and more that we remind ourselves of these truths and we create the distinction, we understand that all of this is fine and I can put it down and I can pick it up. And that's what the teaching is that we are the ones regenerating or not. And it's a conscious choice. And until we come into this knowledge, and that's how our faith is even built up, right? Because we can prove it. We can actually start using the creative power that we have and that we are and start demonstrating, even if it's little by little. Any other? Is this resonating with you at all?
Yes. Just curious about how do you weed out like anger and fear?
Well, there are many practices, and the first one is and we can discuss this, and this could be an hour discussion, but there are many ways to deal with it. One is first knowing and standing firmly in the truth that nobody makes you angry, right? That we come into conscious awareness that I decide. We can, of course, be out there and the old way is, you said something crazy to me, I'm upset, I'm mad at you, right? This is all how we've been taught. And generally, even as children, we watched it happen between parents or other people, and then we also responded those same ways. But in this teaching, in this knowing, we know that emotions and thoughts are objects. They're not me. And I can either be ruled by them, they can rule me, and like a ship on the ocean that's being tossed to and fro by the waves or emotions that are within us, or we become the captain of the ship and can navigate and have a smooth, course in knowing that I am the author and administrator of how I feel. So one is forgiveness. Another one is just plain out forgiving, right? It's such a powerful tool that we have. And at first it may be hard, again, with the intellect, but it's actually easy to say. I guess where some difficulty might be for some is getting it here to the heart and then getting it here into the solar plexus. Because of all of these things, and we can definitely get very deep in our metaphysical, but the Buddhists say that your mind and consciousness resides here. And isn't this where we have a lot of what we call disturbances when it comes to emotions? Right here in our solar plexus. And when we have great love for people, it's definitely from our chest, from our heart. We say from our heart area, but in fact, our hearts can beat for ones that we love passionately and non-passionately, but passion with a true love and not a lustful love. But we can have this radiating love from our heart and also from our mind. So it's getting to a point of speaking, I forgive you. And it's that first, we'll call them affirmations, that there's nothing to hate. I forgive everyone and everything. So it's speaking truth, even when we don't believe it yet. But truth has a way of breaking down those energies. Vicki, would you like to ring in on how would you deal with
Well, I think you're doing a good job with it in terms of, first you have to make the decision to change how you feel, because being angry and upset does not feel good, which is why we have the upsets in our body. It's the energy is restless, it's not calm. So it's really making that decision and then moving in that direction. And it might be just affirmations to start with. Affirmations can be very powerful. We may not even believe them when we first speak them, but pretty soon they start to resonate and they start to calm the body. And as we experience that, we become
Yeah. And it's forgiving them. And listen, forgiveness doesn't require them to even know you're forgiving them. Forgiveness does not require reciprocation, right? It doesn't require you even speaking to them and saying, hey, I forgive you. And then they get pissed off again, and then there's some energy exchange that's, it's in your quiet space. It's your quiet time where you say, I forgive you. I let it go. And because, truthfully, when we allow people and things and situations to upset us, 9 times out of 10, our anger, that response anger that we'll call anger that we have for someone for how they treated us or what they did to us, is only affecting us. And where does that all reside? It resides in your mind, your consciousness. And in fact, no matter what anger and retaliatory thoughts that we may have, they don't affect them, right? They're not affecting them. It's really still causing you disturbance. So we actually aid and create more disturbance, and because we're holding on. So forgiving and letting go. I forgive everyone and everything, and I let go. And breathe it out. That's another thing. Get it out. Take in goodness and forgive, and breathe it out. And breathe. I cannot tell you how important it is in the midst of someone, when you would used to say the person's making me angry. Pay attention. Be aware. That's it. Remind yourself somehow, some way, and it may take a little practice, a little time, but remind yourself, what are my tools? Because these are spiritual tools for your daily life. Breathe. And know that you don't have to respond. That old phrase, it takes 2 to tango. 2 to tango. And 2 to tangle. Is that when silence is so powerful. Because also our ego wants to defend our truth or the truth, but the truth needs no defending, and so silence is a good tool. Yes?
Thank you. What other tools are there that you can share with us?
Sure. Tools as in with dealing with anger? Oh gosh.
I know.
Yes, sir.
It works for me, all these tools, they only work if you remember to use them. So that's the first thing.
Yes.
Remembering that you have a choice to get angry or not to get angry, but the mind can only really hold on to one thought at a time. So when I get really angry, I start counting, sometimes backwards, so it takes more focus, because you say the mind can only do one thing at a time, but sometimes you can start counting and then just forget that you're counting because it's a habit, right? And get back to your angry thought. But sometimes counting backwards, which takes more thought, helps you to, because the anger starts in the mind, what you're thinking about, your retaliation to what's being said and stuff. So once you start recognizing that you're going to be getting angry, that these are the triggers to your anger, you can just stop the thinking and do the counting instead, and it works for me.
Yeah.
I have to remember
to remember. Yes, Vicki.
I think that sometimes distracting yourself with, exactly what Rock is sharing, is counting backwards is a distraction.
Yep.
It is changing the thought. But other things to change the thought are, play some music, move to it, read something positive or whatever. I think one thing that's important is to remind people that forgiving doesn't mean that we forget. We just don't dwell on it. We don't dwell on the offense, because that keeps it alive and active in ourselves. But it doesn't mean that we don't, really forget it, but we do set it aside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And setting aside, that's for that, whoever it was or whatever it was that caused it, that's theirs to deal with, not ours.
Yeah.
Ours is only to fix ourselves,
Eh.
help ourselves to feel better.
Yes. And the other side to this is to be aware. And because we're here and whoever's there listening to this, we're definitely taking steps in our awareness. And so let us take the step to also be aware that all of our world, everything that we experience, is part of our projecting too. And that if we were to analyze, was I thinking before I ever, so I'll use an example, two people at work. So before I go to work, in my alone time, in my consciousness, was I thinking I'm gonna run into Joe? Before it ever happened, I'm at home, I'm gonna run into Joe and Joe's gonna say that. And am I creating an experience and experience is a good one? Am I creating a story and then walking into that story later? Most of us are. So when we can also be in conscious awareness, and that's why it's so important, I say, and not just I, the sages of the ages, but then I as well, say, I master my thoughts, master my emotions, master myself. Because most opposition that we run into is our own doing. And if we can stop it, if we can work on love, loving thy neighbor as thyself, these things, and speaking it. And so when I think of this person, and you could actually test it, I've done it, and it hands down works. I promise you, it is provable that those people that you have conflict with, you can consciously, actively, in your own time, think good thoughts about them. Forget the things that upset you or made you mad. But this tool is probably one of the best ones that you, in fact, tell a story that is good for you too. I'm going to see Joe today and I'm going to hug him. And I'm going to tell him I love him. Or I'm going to think this good thought, that a good thing, what can I see good about this person? And how can I share that with them today? And then when you go into that experience, when it becomes manifest, and that is exchange, you're exchanging different energy too. You're projecting, because everything that we see, as we said earlier, everything that we see, hear, think, smell, touch, all the senses are within us. This is so important to remember. We want to think it's external to us, that it's out there, but it is all within us. And that's why I love dreams so much, in the explanation and giving glimpses of the truth about ourselves. And dreams, for me, are great symbols. And I think that's a great word for me to put a symbol of that understanding. So hopefully that makes sense too, that let's consciously, if someone makes me angry, why do they make me angry? Self-reflect on that. Am I really sending negative energy to them? I promise you that if you turn that around within yourself, it will turn around in the external, because it's all within us. Everything really is. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes for us. But when we can prove it, when we can prove that changing our consciousness changes our lives, when we can prove that, then we're more active in our creative power. And we're more active in utilizing and wielding the power for good for everyone, including our neighbor and including our quote unquote enemies. But I believe we get to a point, and I know I have, that I have no enemies and I have no opposition. And the more that we speak it and we believe it and think it and live it openly, receptively, then it becomes. It becomes. Does that help? Gosh, where do we go from here? No. I definitely wanted to read The Teacher Within, this part. So true understanding, and we've talked about this, comes from within. There is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding. Only God can teach us, and since man is the image of omnipotence, within him is all knowledge, and the Spirit of truth is his true instructor. And so God within us, the kingdom of God within us. We are the living temples of this divine consciousness. We are the form that divine consciousness that we spring out of, but we're one with. And so this, some call it intuition, which is a great word, right? We instinctively, especially women and mothers, right, have great, great intuition from their children and things, and that is that connection with divine consciousness. And so this intuition is, right, it's a knowing without knowing. Is how do I know? I'm sure, I know I have unnumberable amount of times known things without knowing them, so to speak. And we all have, I'm convinced of that. There's been times when you've known something, you've answered something, it's come from you. You didn't study it, but it sprang from you and it was true. And so this intuition is divine consciousness that we're one with. And if, you know, if there's only one true mind, which is the omnipresent God mind, divine consciousness mind, that is all knowledge, all everything, all knowing, all intelligence, and we're one with it, then there is a way to tap into it and receive that knowledge. And once again, it does start with not walking around. Matter of fact, it does not benefit you to say, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. It actually benefits you to say, I know it all. And I know it all. I know all. I know everything I'll ever know. And you will start seeing. And here's the magic or the mystical or the metaphysical about that statement. Because once again, intellect may say, man, you don't know nothing. How dare you say that? But watch. As you speak that, because it is in fact true. We are one with divine consciousness. So does that mean that we're restricted and cut off from all knowing? No. It means that there's something that we're not tuning into, receiving, being receptive, once again, to that flow of information and knowledge and wisdom. And when we start speaking the truth that I know all I'll ever know, a book will fall off the shelf and have the answer you were looking for. Someone will come up to you. Something will come to you. It will come to you. So it is provable as well. You will find that things are far less difficult for you. You know, the effortlessness will start happening and it comes to you, right? It's happened for me. You know, I've told the stories before. There are things, I was never a plumber. I was never this. I haven't been taught any of that stuff. But in the midst of saying, I'm going to do this, I can do it. I honestly said I could do it. I looked at it, I went out and bought parts, and then I did it. And I'm a plumber now. And it's so funny, right? Here's little things, but it's the truth. You know, we are so ready, and it's okay, by the way, for all you plumbers out there, to call a plumber to come do the job for me. Or the electrician to come do the job for me. You know, I'll tell a quick story. My mother had electrical problems at one of her rentals, and they were trying to charge her all kinds of money. And I think at first she was probably willing to pay until she said, well, that's way too much. And then she told herself clearly, I can do this. And with confidence went and did something that would have cost thousands of dollars. And with no electrical knowledge or anything else, she was capable. And it starts with saying we're capable. It starts with saying I am capable. I am tapped into that knowledge. I am, you know, I know everything I need to know. And it starts to show up. Does that make sense? Does that, you know, can you probably think of a time that's already happened in your life about something, knowing something about someone or doing something? And so sometimes we brush those things off like, oh, I don't know, it's just quinky dink, right? What is a coincidence? You know, so we have these moments where the all-knowing shows up within our consciousness. But the more that we tune ourselves into being open, right? Saying that you know, I am one with divine, all-knowing, all knowledge, Even saying that opens up pathways. You know, call it atoms and subatomic particles, call it, you know, energy flowing, infinite wave potential, you know, whatever you want. But the fact is that we create our reality with our consciousness, with our thoughts. And isn't it true that the opposite of the good that we think about ourselves and the negative things seem to befall us? Even Job, you know, which is a great lesson in the Bible. You know, I never really dug the book of Job because, you know, I didn't like the fact that, you know, you read he loses his family and da, da, da. But it's a great, powerful story of this man who was considered righteous and blah, 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 and had everything, and then loses everything. And of course, everyone's telling him, dude, you must have pissed God off, man. He gave you all that stuff and took it away. And through Job's progression of working through all these things that befell him, he even said, my worst fears came upon me. You know, so he was precognating these things happening. He used to do all these alms and sacrifices because he thought his children were wicked. You know, they're so spoiled, and I've given them everything. They're so spoiled. I need to go sacrifice to God. And then all this stuff befalls him because the key here is that he worried about it. Those were his worst fears. And so our worst fears will fall upon us. And that's another reason why to eradicate, rip out, deny, negate, remove fear, and stand strong. Because if you dwell and give energy, as Vicky said, if you're giving energy and awareness, if you're looking, really, I call it looking and feeding, and pay attention to what you're feeding with your mind or intellect consciousness, with your heart and your solar plex energy. Pay attention to that, because you can stop it. If you're aware that I'm doing this and focusing on my biggest fears and worries, stop it and replace it with good. Because that's what Job found out. That in the end, after they all said, you must have done something. We know you did something. And then Job finally stood up in confidence and said to God, you know that I'm not wicked. You made me, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he stood in the confidence and the realization that he had done it to himself. And when he came to the realization that he, in fact, brought it upon himself, he removed it from himself. And so this is where it's a great story to show that, in fact, it wasn't God and it wasn't the devil. Keep in mind, even this is the story where most people will say, well, Satan came and was talking with God and negotiating. That, let's be clear, the devil, Satan, is that self-mortal ego in these teachings. That the one that says, I've now got this power of all this realization and God power that I know I am, and I'm going to use it for selfishness and against others, opposed to being, you know, kind and giving and using your gifts for all, right? And benefiting all, for your neighbor and yourself. And so, you know, it's once again shows that, in fact, there are no two powers, and it's just the one power. I hope that makes sense. I hope it came across properly, to where, once again, it is our choice and our awareness and our active utilization of these creative powers that we are, and we're using them, and we've been using them, and it's being in our awareness and our consciousness to make sure that we are holding on to good things that benefit us and our neighbors, and releasing those things that are of no benefit to us and no benefit to anyone. I
think it's important, Dan, to say something about humility. You know, when we start to recognize that we have power over our own belief and thought, and by humility, I mean that others have that same choice.
Yes.
That we can't choose for anyone else.
Yeah.
That they, you know, when we come to a class like this and we're willing to ask for guidance, you know, that's a choice that we make when we see others that don't seem to have the knowledge or the beliefs that we have that have helped us. We can't force it on them. We have to ask and be humble in our power that we're gaining.
Yes. Yes. And humbleness and meekness are such great words if we can grasp those, meanings of what we mean by that. I think, and I think I'm accurate when I say that Jesus didn't heal anybody who didn't come asking. He didn't force his creative power on anyone. And it first started with him. Even when he was baptized and the Holy Spirit and God, quote unquote, divine consciousness spoke out loud one of the few times saying, "This is my son of who I'm blah, blah, blah." Jesus needed 40 days in the wilderness, when all that, power came unto him, because he was tempted by the devil, they say, personal ego. I got all this power. I got all this stuff. I can just go out and bam, bam, bam. I could just take over the world, right? That was one of the temptations. That was a self-temptation, right? That this power comes unto us, and it's a phase of the student or devotee or whatever term we want to use in this teaching too, because once we're in this awareness, and once we're aware of this power, God is not taking power from us. He gives it eternal. It is there for us. And so once we know and we're aware, we have to be wise and humble in that walk as we continue to pass through, that time of when we come into this power, that I'm going to wield it for personal gain. That doesn't mean that we don't have prosperity coming to us. It just means, am I, bringing riches and blah, blah, blahs, or am I using this power against somebody? Like I'm purposely, using my thought power and against others or to benefit me. These are using those powers improperly, and clearly from all the sages of the ages we've been taught that if you're not humble and meek, then the power can actually not be well for you. You can misuse it, but really this power is meant first and foremost for us to conquer the quote unquote self that we have been taught we are. It's to come into, and I use the word conquer. It's not the best word as far as I'm concerned, but and mastery, I like that word, but then I don't like the master-slave, mentality that comes with it. But it's really a mastering of ourselves, of all of these things that we called ourselves that are really creative power. And we rise into that freedom, and we're then using this creative power, which is our world experience within myself, in my backyard, wielding creative power for my neighbor and myself, for my family and my extended world family. Saying that as I speak my truths, and I am creating my reality of peace and love and health and all these things, that I'm consciously aware and humbly calling these same things in for my friends, family, strangers, neighbors, everyone. That the wisdom that is being unfolded and revealed unto me, that the whole world is awakening to. And that we are, in a way, you can call that praying or communing with Spirit for everyone. That it's not just self-centered focus, because these teachings and this understanding and this realization brings us into the realization that we are all one, and that there is only one. And that's an unfolding, that is a realization that is beautiful to me, that is beautiful to me. And that's how we should be using our power, and that's how Christ used it. And again, so we may see people, and that's our judging, and that we need to try to stay away from bias and prejudgment against appearances, because we see things, we'll say even people and things, and we instantly want to prejudge from our previous thoughts about, I see that person and I now label them this, that, and they're whatever, right? I don't even want to speak it. But it is not seeing them as any different than us. And hopefully we're seeing ourselves as unfolding this divine nature and this divine character, and that we are one, and that what you've done to the least of them, you've done unto me, right? And it's beautiful to see it. It's beautiful to be in it, even without it being returned to you, right? And for me, I know that's what this eternal love that is divine consciousness, that real love, once again, has given us this experience, given us the power to have our own experience without even turning or looking or giving any love back, right? It's not required. It's just not required. But how beautiful and wonderful it is when that love truly touches us and we want to give that love back. And recognition, really even just recognition, knowing and being in that love, it helps to change your daily outlook. It helps to change your life when we know that God loves us and cares for us, and that we love God and care for God, and that this is God showing up in front of me in form, in beautiful variety of ways, shining and sharing and expressing, And the more that we can see each other that way, the easier, the happier, the less troubles, the less angers, the less all those things that we used to say were a part of our daily lot really aren't there. And you start to experience peace on a more regular basis and random joy, random laughter, random kindness finds you because you were random kindness came right back to you. Does anyone have anything to share or to offer in the midst of all of our words?
I'd like to go back to that, when we were talking about what to do about the angry thoughts, and recognize that, the angry thoughts are because there's something to be afraid of, something that we either want that we don't get, or something that we have that we might lose. So in this unfolding of our self, our true self, we begin to realize that there's nothing there to lose, that that's not our true life or our true self. It's only a perception of something that may be threatened, that needs defending. And so we move through that fear because there's nothing to fear. We're one with everything. And the anger can't follow because there's nothing to be afraid of losing or not getting. When you talked about the prosperity that is ours for each individual, separate expression of God, it's far beyond what we dream about in this mortal world. It's something that frees us from all insecurity or need. And I don't want to go too far into that, but it really helps to talk about these bits of knowledge or vision of our true selves together. So later when we see the challenges of believing or having faith, we're more ready to fill our mind with those thoughts than the thoughts of everyone for themselves. I have to get mine while I'm still young and alive. These are the thoughts that I have and had through my awakening and still do, but I'm beginning to realize that the prize that I'm looking for as a something in this material world is far short of the things that we're discussing here of real freedom
Yeah.
and real security.
Yes, yes, and the more that we put our confidence, our faith, and knowledge in this universal higher power that we call God, divine consciousness, the more that we truly put that first, put the kingdom of God first, and all other things shall be added. This is a cosmic truth and law. Nothing that is ours can be taken from us. If something leaves, a material object is, well, I'll use the word stolen from you, it was never yours. And it's letting go. Because what is truly yours can never be taken from you. And when we put God first, and when we truly are walking that whole conscious awareness that the invisible God, almighty higher power, is my true provider, then everything comes to us without the worry about it. It's said that God knows what we need before we ask. I love the two sentences that the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. Because that means that when I'm relying on God, divine consciousness, for my everything, truly, like for real, even if you have a job, it becomes effortless. It's not the job that brings you your security when we rely on God. When we rely on God, it's not a house, it's not a home, it's not your food, it's not your money. It is God that is our true security that nobody can take from you. No one has the power to remove this security from you. No one has the capability to steal your love and faith and confidence from the invisible that we call God. And God is ever providing for us for real, just as your consciousness right now is provided for you, your awareness, your life, your breath, everything truly here and now is provided for you without effort. And when we are in that realization, when we know that to be the truth, what labor have I done for my origin? What labor have I done for this mind and consciousness and awareness that I have? It is given to me and it cannot be taken. Even the sages of the ages were thrown in prisons. Some of us today have been thrown in prisons. They can try to take from you what they think, right? They think they're taking something from you. But within your consciousness, within your mind, no matter where you are and what circumstances you find yourself in, when you have faith and confidence of really who you are as a child of God and who is your provider, nothing can hold you for long. And all those things dissolve and you are resting truly in spirit. My life is absolutely, I have been through many things that I now realize that I was a worker and participator in creating difficulties for myself. But there was still within me divine consciousness speaking to me and telling me that I can change the story. I can change my consciousness, I can change my choices, and I can stand in that confidence of God at any time and be safe and secure. And so there is safety and security in the invisible. And this is one of the things we're working towards, because we're not speaking of things that normally we say you see with your eyes. And in fact, the more that you understand unto yourself that I am trusting in this invisible power that is the only power that is here and now, but I can't see it or touch it with my hands. I can't grab it with even my imagination. The true idea of the true God is beyond an image for you to produce within your own imagination or consciousness. Yet it's called understanding. It's called, knowing. These are words I try to use for us to capture the essence. But the more that we realize that that this that we're talking about is not fantasy, but this is the reality that all forms and all appearances spring from, then our connections are growing and demonstrations will begin to happen and continue to happen for us within and then without. But each one of us, it is within first, folks, as we all should know, that this is our work. Nobody could do it for us. I can't impart it to you. I can only remind you of that which is within you, ready to impart it unto yourselves and reveal and unfold and grow and emanate. It's here, it's now, and it all is with you. And all capacity you have, all wisdom, all knowledge, all power is given unto me in heaven, consciousness, and earth, body. You know, there are so many deeper meanings to these phrases that Jesus the Christ spoke unto us, that Krishna, Shiva, Pythagoras, Aristotle, Plato, the list goes on. These sages of the ages were connected in sharing divine inspiration with others. And there are so many layers and phases that we can get to try. You know, I use my hands to say like I'm reaching for to grasp, but once again, it's not something that I grasp with the hands, but it is something that we grasp with consciousness or that understanding. And I always like, you know, and this is an inspiration that came to me, is that some people have a hard time believing in the invisible. But even now, your life force that pushes, that is animating my movement is invisible. My thoughts, or the thoughts that I project and thoughts that I witness, these are invisible, right? Even here, that which we say, you know, we're separate, there's an invisible atmosphere that is truly having us all connected, even in the material form of connectivity from that understanding. And so truly the invisible is the real that we are connecting with. And from this invisible, we are bringing forth manifestations. And so I want to continue to share that with you, that our thoughts, our emotions, and our words are creative power. Our faith in this higher power, along with the knowledge that we've proven and that comes to us without someone telling me, or the revelations or intuitions that rise into my consciousness are here with me. And these are glimpses, symbols for us to know and to be aware of, that our experience, our awareness, our observation is the true witness to all of these things. And that true witness is untouched. And that's how we get to a place where we can say to ourselves, I can never be sick, because I'm speaking the truth that is invisible. My soul, my spirit, my consciousness is without form and can never be harmed and can never catch a dis-ease. It can never be angry or upset. It can never be hurt. It's untouchable. And so that is the joy of realization of this unity with divine consciousness, and that faith along with the knowledge and wisdom, which is wisdom. What time is it? Do you know? Is it that time? Does anyone want to share anything that has resonated with you? Is there anything that anyone feels we haven't touched upon, that we haven't said? Does anyone have anything within them rising within you to share with us?
I guess I like to, when I think about faith, I think about belief. You know, it's a word that I use interchangeably. So faith, belief.
Yes. Yes. Believing. And a phrase that every sage, and you go do, don't just believe me, go research every sage of the age. As a man believeth in his heart, so he is. And that's two places that they try to designate within your mind and within your heart. Jesus said it, Buddha said it, Krishna said it, Lao Tzu said it. All of these sages of the ages from all different points of what we call space and time spoke the same thing about belief. And true belief is a knowing, right? It's not a assuming belief. It is a knowing. And so I like to make that distinction clear, that true belief is knowing. And once again gets into confidence, right? Those words all working together. So yes. So we'll just get to the practice then, since we're at a wrap here for the night. The practice, meditate upon scriptural passages. And when I say scriptural passages, it could be biblical, it could be Gnostic text, for all of you out there on the internet and those of you here. It could be, ancient texts from Lao Tzu, Confucius, any of the Greek philosophers that we've mentioned tonight, Plato, Aristotle, Zeno, Pythagoras, Jesus Christ, the Bible, the Gnostic text. A lot of folks don't know about the Gnostic text that exist. And so there's lots of scriptures, whether it be the Quran for some, whether it be the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is another one. There is wisdom and scriptural passages from all of those teachings, from all of those sages of the ages that we can ponder. And so while holding that, you say to yourself, you have the mind of God, and that he makes you understand what he has inspired. Watch that your lips and your thoughts do not assert, I do not know, and I can't understand. It is true that the carnal mind does not know the things of God, and not that we are sufficient of ourselves to thinking anything. If we are speaking from the earthly standpoint, but we are not. Our purpose is to train our believing into our divine self and keep our eye lifted above the earth. And so carnal mind, if you've never heard that, carnal mind is that mortal mind. It's that mind that is doubtful, and it's that one that most of us are walking with, our self-mind, when we are, personal ego, we'll say. So I want to make sure, for those who haven't heard that, and keep our eye lifted up above earth. Earth meaning, metaphysically, keeping it above the material into the consciousness realm of divine mind. Learn to look upon all things material, personal, or evil as but signs and symbols, back of which means behind, underneath, or the emanating force, the real substance, the real, to be found and expressed or hold, or found, to be found or to be, here we go, the real, to be found and expressed or drawn out by the God-man in us. Realization will come, only be faithful. What you consciously hold today sinks deep into the subconscious realm, where lie these false memories and habits of thinking, and persistent right believing will at last displace the old mind and substitute for the untrue the true. And it is what we spoke about before. The more we speak truth, the more that we read truth, the more that we speak truth in our waking state, right? This is our conscious waking state. As we know, we're aware of 3 states of consciousness: conscious waking, subconscious dreaming, and then, of course, some will say the unconscious deep sleep, where you're unaware, which we won't get too deep into now because we've discussed it before. But so in the waking state, in this walking state, speaking this truth, planting seeds. Speaking truth is dropping seeds. And speaking these truths will start to uproot in the subconscious, because a lot of these things, as we've discussed before, are rising. Doubt and disbelief are rising from subconscious seeds or weeds that were planted in this life from false teachings of the world. And so practicing this, these words and these ways, and pondering this in our alone time, in our secret place, in our minds and in our hearts, this is where we're doing that gardening of our mind, of our consciousness. And so I hope that some of this has been informative and helpful. I appreciate the feedback and the interaction. To me, it really makes a difference. You guys are a blessing to me. I want each one of you to know that. I'll call you all by name. I don't know if you want to be named on the internet, but you guys are all a blessing to me for showing up and for helping us to remind each other of these truths as we walk this path, these 12 lessons, these 12 steps, these 12 stones, these 12 foundations, these 12 cosmic truths or laws, because all of this is to lead us out of carnal mind, mortal mind, into divine mind. And where we even drop all of this, where it's none of this is necessary, we transcend it all, and we're in a space and place of heaven on earth, divine consciousness here and now. It's not something that we have to die to attain in the mortal sense, in the world sense of speaking. Here and now we can enter in to a blissful, happy state of living and being, and bring healing not only to ourselves, but to those who ask from us when they recognize that something has changed within you, that there's something about you that has changed and is changing and radiating. I'm seeing it. I've seen it. I even told that to someone over there the other day. I really see a glow when we are really, I'll say, eating these words of truth and assimilating them. People are going to notice. And that will be your time to start sharing your faith and knowledge of the truth that you've obtained that has been demonstratable. Because none of this is meant to be a fairy tale that doesn't actually, in the, we'll say, real world work. This is demonstratable. So thank you guys. Love, light, abundance, health, wisdom, truth, all of that is you and us. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes it takes a few days to understand. As the week progresses, you reflect on things that you've said, and it makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Where do you watch it at?
You can actually go on the Home of Truth's Facebook page,
Okay.
and these videos will be,
up
they'll be stuck there. They'll either be in the timeline, or you definitely can go to videos and they're there. And yeah, for sure. I'm supposed to be getting, they're going to give it to me. I say they're going to give it to me, a sign-in sheet so we can stay in communication. But definitely, are you on Facebook? Oh, you are on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you heard about it. Was it just shared through one of the groups, or?
No, I liked the Home of Truth page.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so that'll be the first. You can definitely,
Is this your last class?
No, actually, no. We've got,
Number 5 out of 12.
yeah. So number 6 is next week, and then so technically, we've got 7 more. Yeah. So, and super duper appreciate you coming and bringing, your consciousness and awareness into our
Yeah, I
presence.
appreciate all the feedback I got.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I gotta go eat dinner.
Yes.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Where do you live, by the way?
One block that way.
One block. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you, Michael. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Hope to see you again.